This is me when I'm talking to you. This is me when I'm focusing on attacking. I'm basically controlling games with my mind. I'm using a EEG. Some people were using it for different things, like they were making music or they were using it to push and turn on their light. And I thought if you could turn on your lights, surely you can just push a button on a keyboard. You have to train it to recognize certain patterns when you're thinking about certain things. Playing Elden Ring, it's the alternation between lots and lots of different mental commands, and you have to make sure you're really, really doing it. I can dodge, I can attack, and I can heal. For each one of those, I've basically just very slowly built up very different visualizations. So I'll imagine pushing something heavy. That's my dodge. Then I'll spin a plate to the tune of "You spin me right round, maybe right round." I've trained that about 800 times, and that is solid now. People have killed me several times. It's fine.
She's crying.
Welcome to another episode of the Bad Decisions podcast, where we give you guys a backstage pass to the minds of creatives, visionaries, and entrepreneurs.
And today we're doing something extremely special. So a couple of weeks ago, one of you guys on Instagram DM'd us, and I got to give a shout out to you, Christian Pino or Pino. I hope I'm not murdering that name. You DM'd us about this girl who literally uses her mind to control the character in their game, and she plays video games.
And not any video game, Elden Ring.
She literally chose one of the hardest games in the world to do that with. So what she does is she uses a device, of course, to track her brain activity, and then that translates into input that she can use then to control the characters in the game. It's mind-blowing what she does, and today we wanted to bring her on, of course, to talk about why she's doing all of this. How does it all work? What are the other use cases for this device that she's using?
Can we do that too or no?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of questions popped up in our head, and that's why we had to bring her on. Everybody, please give it up for Perri. What's up, Perri?
Perri, how's it going?
Hi, it's going good. Thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate that.
Perri, it is a pleasure having you. The first time we heard about you, we saw this video that you did, I believe it was on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube Shorts and all that. It was a very short video, but it was generally just you talking about what you're doing right now. I think our immediate reaction was, we have to bring her on the podcast. For everybody to understand, what is it that you're doing that is so special?
So I'm basically controlling games with my mind. It's not a completely new thing. There was a YouTuber called Michael Reeves who controlled a car and things like that. And there was someone who actually made their own EEG with an EEG chip, which is wild, to try and control Minecraft. But I think, as far as I know, I'm the person who kind of got it started and could actually do a whole game with it, which is pretty cool. So basically all that I'm doing is I'm using a EEG. I've got it here.
Oh my
and
God. Wait, that's like one of the ones that Professor X uses it to read minds, you know.
Isn't it the same thing? I don't know. So it's the EEG stands for electroencephalogram. Am I getting that right?
Exactly.
All right. So this essentially, you put it on your head and it tracks your brain activity, takes the electric signals, and then you use that to control your character.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So what you have to do is you have to train it to recognize certain patterns when you're thinking about certain things. So for instance, I will imagine pushing a cube forward or something like that, and I will teach it what that looks like, and then it will remember that. And then every time I imagine a cube, it goes, oh, okay, I know what you're doing. I see that. And then I just coded it up to push a button with Python. That's pretty much it. It's actually pretty simple when you break it down.
But you make it sound simple, but you have to understand, for us, it's extremely cool. And for people who have never heard of this, it's literally some futuristic sci-fi kind of shit. Like, you don't expect this to happen.
It still blows my mind that it works, but it is cool.
What I really want to know is, where did you get this idea from in the first place?
Well, I used EEG a bunch during my degree. So I have a master's in psychology that I've just kind of wrapped up. And during that time, I used the proper big medical EEGs that usually have like 300 electrodes and cables coming out of it. And it's connected to this massive machine that has to be on wheels because otherwise you can't fit it in the building.
Oh my God.
So I used a bunch of those, and usually they use it to diagnose things like epilepsy and now Alzheimer's, which is new and cool.
Okay.
And I didn't know that you could get Bluetooth ones that only had 14 nodes that you could just sort of put on your head and anyone can buy it. And relatively to the massive medical ones, they're quite cheap. I use that loosely because they're not cheap. but no, compared to the 20,000 pound massive machines, they're like that. So I didn't know those existed. And I saw that they existed and I thought, I have some money saved up. I've got to do this on stream. And I was already a psychology streamer. So I do like just chatting true crime stuff. And I thought that would fit the brand.
Okay, so
and it was very cool.
So the thing is, the electroencephalogram, based on my research, it was first developed in the 1920s by a German guy, and his name was Hans Berger, and he wanted to track brain activity, of course, for different reasons, not for playing video games, probably, but he succeeded, and then that, of course, has improved and significantly changed over time, and now you're using it for different use cases. There's a commercial use for it.
Where did you could buy it outside, like commercial use? You could buy
that's
it.
the crazy thing, and I want to know when was the first time you had the idea of using this for video games?
I sort of, it developed pretty naturally. So the reason I got it actually was to just have a visualization on the screen of what my brain looked like during horror games. So I was using it as a sort of new heart rate monitor kind of thing. Okay. And that was really, really cool because it would kind of light up every single time there was a jump scare. And then I heard from the company, Emotive, that some people were using it for different things, like they were making music or they were using it to push and turn on their lights and things like that. And I thought if you could turn on your lights, surely you can just push a button on a keyboard because you can do that through loads of different things. And then there are streamers like Miss Mika using a dance pad, Super Louis 64 using bananas, which blows my mind.
I've seen that video. Yeah. There's like wires attached to a bananas, and I've seen even crazier stuff. And then they use that to control video games.
Wow.
It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, and if you can do that, then you can do it with anything. And the software, the interface that comes with the EEG has that built in that you can train up different commands and mental images that it recognizes. So all you have to do is if it recognizes something, tick box, it recognizes it, send it through, pushes the button, easy. Wow. It wasn't, it took me months, but in principle, easy. In theory.
I still want to understand so the EEG that you used for your course in psychology back in uni, you were using it for research purposes, and did you actually get to try one when you were in uni and then you saw how brain activity works with those devices?
I didn't try one myself. I did put it on someone else, which was quite fun. And then you could just see all the little spikes in the graph. And a lot of the research that I did was kind of watching videos and seeing journals of people in the past. And it's very, very complicated and it looked really weird. Not like the stuff I'm doing now because everything is spikes on a massive graph.
Right.
But what I'm doing and what kind of you can do with this is make a 3D visualization. So for me, you're just seeing the pretty colors, which is much better and much more simple.
Much more visually really appealing than spikes. I agree. So
absolutely.
These EEG devices are tracking your brain activity. Of course, your neurons are transferring the electric signals. And once that's happening, usually that would be translated to the spikes, but can you actually read the spikes, or that data has to go through some sort of machine learning to be processed, and then you can use that data to understand, okay, what is happening?
Yeah, so usually you would just look at the spikes and then you'd be like, oh, okay, so when you slap someone across the face, their brain goes crazy. Write that down.
Have you done that? Slapped someone?
That's unethical, so it's going to have to be off the books. Officially, I've never done that. You're totally right. In order to train it up so that it recognizes what you're doing and what that looks like, it has to be a long process over hours and hours and hours of machine learning and it basically doing that. So yeah, it has to go through some sort of algorithm. I didn't make the algorithm. I've just been taught about the algorithm, so it's something, but yeah, it has to go through that.
Wow. When I went to the website, I saw they have different models where it has different signals. I think it was 14, 32, and it would go all the way to bigger numbers.
60 something as well. It's different number of electrodes, right? What difference does that make?
Yeah, we wonder, is that the accuracy? How many electrodes are you using now? Have you tried different ones?
I haven't, apart from the massive medical ones, I haven't tried any of the others. The difference that it is mainly is accuracy in terms of where signals are coming from. So EEG is always really bad at that. It's really good at knowing what the signals are, like what kind of frequency they are, and knowing when they happen. That's what it's used for. But they don't really know where it's coming from because they're only on the surface. But the more electrodes you have, the wider the surface area of your head that you can cover. So it gets better and better and better like that. But if you don't need that, then it doesn't really matter. So for my purposes, it doesn't really matter. And I think that's why they make the 14 sensors, because the fewer you have, the easier it is to put it on and stuff like that. But yeah, in theory, if you had more sensors, the accuracy in general would probably increase. They're making different ones now that only have 2. Or they're like earbuds that emanates. Those are new, and I might be prototyping them soon, which will be really fun. And they can't really do much that the regular EEG can do, but they can track things like focus or amount of activity, which can be used for different stuff. I mean, there's a primary school in China which are putting headbands that are exactly like that on kids and measuring their focus and when they lose concentration. It's really weird. And
Wow.
a little bit
so
worrying.
happy. I was out of focus all the time back in school.
Okay, let's make this clear. Farhad cannot use the EEG devices. This guy's brain has thousands of activities running simultaneously. It's gonna be lit with
Wild
just
West.
activity. Yeah, there's no way you can. The EEG device will just fail in the moment it tries to track his brain. You should not use an EEG device.
Yeah, I mean, I have symptoms of ADHD and stuff like that too. Not that I'm diagnosing you now. I tend to accidentally diagnose people. Yeah, so when I think of the different mental commands that I've had to pick in order to train that up, it's always really active stuff, lots of things moving about and music in my head and stuff, just to make it something that I can focus on for a long period of time. Because if it's just me picturing a butterfly or something, I'm not going to hold that. I'm going to be looking around
so
the room.
let's figure that out. So clearly me and Farhad have a little bit of an idea of how this works because we watch your videos, but I assume for a lot of people listening and watching right now, they're still like, what the hell is going on? So let's take this and break this down. Let's talk about Elden Ring, right? You need to attack, you need to defend, you need to dodge for the majority of time. There's, of course, loads of other things you need to do. But in the fight, I assume those are the controls you need the most,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Am I right? Okay.
You can do most boss fights with just those 3.
Perfect. So you need to do attack, you need to dodge, you need to defend. Which one have you managed to map to your brain activity, and what is that brain activity that you've trained to map to that, action?
So it's exactly those 3. I can dodge, I can attack, and I can heal. And for each one of those, I've basically just very slowly built up very different visualizations that involve really different movements and different things. And that's basically what my brain activity is. It's remembering what my brain looks like when I'm imagining that thing, because our brain activity looks so different depending on what we're doing. And by what my brain activity looks like, what I mean is what kind of brain waves they are. So the frequency, how fast they are, where they are at any one point. So it remembers quite a holistic picture all at once. And so for each of those, my particular mental commands that work for me, but for other people will be completely different, is I'll imagine pushing something heavy. That's my dodge.
Okay.
And then I'll spin a plate to the tune of "You spin me right round, maybe right round," because the ADHD. I need something like that. And that's my attack. And then my heal is sinking something in water is the visualization to the tune of Lacrimosa, I think.
Okay.
Wow.
Wait, I need to understand this. So I assume the reason you're attaching a song to it is because it becomes even more specific. Is that right?
And the pace
Okay.
as well, because if I found it took me so long to train up the spinning the plate thing because I kept making the plate a different size and
In
I kept
your mind?
spinning it. Yeah, I kept spinning it
my-
at a different
okay.
rate. And so sometimes it just wouldn't work because it would be different.
Can you walk us through? Imagine we have just bought the EEG device
Yeah.
and now we
Okay.
want to train our first command. What is the process now? Should I lock the door, turn off the lights, sit in the middle of the room? Like
Kick Farhad out of the room so he doesn't talk to me.
So
right?
how would it work?
So you can do that, but that means when you play the game, you'd have to do that and have to be in that situation. It's
wait, so
really
you-
specific.
Holy cow. Okay, all right. So how does it work?
So the first thing you should do is basically just be as you would when you're playing the game. You
Okay.
can always train it up later and it will remember different situations, so it's fine. But the first thing you have to do is kind of pick an image or pick a movement or something that is different to your normal. So before you actually do anything, you've got to train it to remember what your normal is. So you do that a few hundred times over a few hours, and you basically just let it remember what your brain activity looks like when you're not really doing anything, or when you're playing the game, or just anything normal. And then once it's got that down, you'll never know if it's got that down. You just have to kind of assume, but it probably does. Then you pick your mental command that is something completely different. So I don't usually sit in a room and imagine pushing something heavy. I tend to avoid physical exertion where I can, because it's uncomfortable. So that's something that I don't do. And then you train that up over a few hours. You should... Just for the first one, you should begin to see it working after only doing it 10 times.
Okay.
But
And when you, sorry to cut you off, and when you say 10 times, each of those times takes what, 10 seconds, 20
10
seconds?
seconds.
10
So it
seconds,
records
okay.
you doing it for 10 seconds and you have to hold it. So it's
Right.
really important to be able to hold it, hence why
And
you
you
can't do
s-
something too simple.
And you see the brain activity, so you'll see it lighting up, and you're like, okay, it tracked it. I can do it again now.
Yeah, so in this
Okay.
software, it has a visualization for you, and that's a cube. And the cube can move however you tell it to move. And the cube will start to move if it recognizes the pattern of brain activity that you're doing. So for me, I have a
okay.
cube on the screen. And if I imagine pushing forward, the cube should go away from me.
Okay.
It doesn't often, but it should.
Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the spinning the plate. So you imagine a plate and you're spinning it, and then you record it however many times, maybe a couple of hundred times, and
Yeah.
then you figure out, okay, now this is working. Then that same night you have a stream. So what you need to do is map the electrical signal, that activity, to the button on your, keyboard or joystick that you use.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you do the mapping?
So I've basically made a controller in Python, and I've used the API from the software that remembers the pattern of brain activity. And basically all it is over a certain threshold if it recognizes it, because that's just part of the API. It knows if it's recognizing it, right, with the cube moving.
Right.
So
Yeah.
over a certain threshold, if it recognizes it, then it just pushes the button. That's pretty much it. And
Wow.
then with the controller that I've made, I've integrated gyro, so I'll tilt my head and that'll move. That was an easy thing to do, again, from the Emotive API. And then now, which is really cool, I can just change the key binding. It doesn't have to be a specific thing that I go through and in the code and edit every single time. I have a little drop-down menu. I was very proud of that. And I can just change it per game, which is pretty cool.
We
wanna
both
go?
have
Yeah,
questions.
yeah,
You go. I'll keep mine.
So imagine you have your plate spinning recorded. Can you use it differently in different games? So can you say in Elden Rings this is heal, in Halo 3, I don't know if it's another button that I push. You can reuse your commands, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you kind of have to, otherwise it will take you hours and hours and hours to train for different games. So long as
Yeah.
it's the same visualization, you can keybind that to anything you want for anything.
And
And you can also convert it to an Xbox controller, which makes it easier for some games
so
as well.
technically you have a universal controller right now. That's
Pretty
what it
much.
is.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
So the Python code, was that something that you did yourself, or was it from the Emotive guys, or do you have a friend doing that for you?
I've done it myself with the help of my friend who's quite good at the coding stuff. So
Okay.
every single time I'm like, I have no idea how to do this, because of course
Can
my
you
area is
debug this for me?
psychology.
But now you're saying you have the drop down, and I'm assuming that's something that you are adding incrementally over time, right? You're upgrading
We
your
are.
software.
We are upgrading
So
it.
we are at Perri 2.0 now.
Okay, how much are you gonna sell the software for? No, but I this is really interesting, because now I'm thinking, so the plate spinning, if you're in the middle of the stream, because I used to stream before and I know how stressful it can get, especially if you're playing games like Elden Ring and you have multiple people in the
Commenting.
chat, and do you have the thing where they give you bits on Twitch and then they play a sound that they like?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Doesn't that ruin the whole thing? Because you have the game
Yeah.
sound, then you have them. Because I had people knocking on the door, and I thought someone was actually knocking. Like, I had these weird sounds on my stream, so I'm assuming all of that happening, and you're trying to think about a plate that has to be the exact
Yeah.
same size and it's spinning. How do you do that?
I don't. People have killed me several times because I've been trying to dodge out of the way, and they'll play a sound and then they won't dodge, and then I'll get smacked in the face by something.
So
That's fun. It's fun.
She's crying and
Yeah,
For them.
But-
I'm having fun.
Are certain patterns easier to train than the others? Like, have you found that, oh my God, like if I use a cube, push, pull, throw, like are these patterns easier to train than the other one?
Yeah, that depends on you and what you like. But if some are too similar to the others, they just won't work. I was trying to do pull for a while. So my first one was push. I've trained that about 800 times, and that is solid now. But when I was trying to do pull, it was just too similar for whatever reason, and it never worked. I trained it for about 1,000 times, I think we got to, and I have faith that it will work, because you have to. You have to have faith.
Yes.
But it just never did. Hence the spinning, actually, because I was trying to base it on what I would use it for. So the spinning originally was to heal. So I was my first thing was imagining pouring a drink down me. But that was too physical and too variable, and I would do it different every single time, so it wasn't going to work. And then I thought, okay, so instead of pouring something down, you pull something towards you. That was too similar to the push. And so I just thought, literally, I just kind of packed it all in and was like, what is something completely different from looking in a certain spot and pushing and focusing in? And it was just that was the opposite that I could think of, and that's the reason why.
And it makes sense because the concept of the plate spinning, I even assumed your own mind is training yourself. Every time you think about it, after 1,000 times, you're gonna pretty much think about it the same way as well, right? So you're gonna get better at thinking about it the same way. What about more specific and more obvious answers? Like if you're gonna dodge, can you imagine just dodging, or is that going to be too variable as well every single time? Or something even more obvious than that, pushing a button that looks like the letter A, and that's going to be your A, right? Because A is a very specific letter, right? I'm just asking you because I've never played with this. I'm assuming, do these obvious answers work? Because that's what everybody would think of, but then probably it doesn't, right?
That's like one of the most common questions that I get. Why not just imagine to attack? And yeah, you're completely right. One of the reasons is because it's too variable. What is attacking? What kind of sword are you using? Are you casting a spell or whatever? So it doesn't really work. It doesn't really make sense. It has to be the same every single time. And the other thing, like pushing a button on a controller, I think you can do this with the right equipment. And I saw some weird Neuralink thing. I don't know about Neuralink, but an ape was typing, so it's pretty cool. But I can't do it. Not with this EEG, not with 14 sensors, not with this method of trading. So it would be way too similar. Every button looks the same. The pushing is the same action. If imagining pushing something, and then pulling something is too similar, that's going to be way too similar. I'm sure you can do it. It will probably just take days to get right, and there's kind of no reason. You could just do other things.
Makes perfect sense. No, go ahead.
You see, we have so many questions.
The more she's talking to me, the more I want to ask.
I want to ask about, so we are talking about actions, right? Pushing, pulling. How about feelings? Can I think of my teacher at grade 2, the hate comes up and then the action happens? Or can I think of Faraz and then, love comes up and then
that's so sweet.
Love, yeah. Like, does feeling also work? Or like anger, jealousy? Can we train those feelings? Not that I want to, but just to.
It would. But the problem is more of a psychological thing. Because when you think of something over and over again, you get used to that feeling. Kind of like taking a drug, right? Your brain adapts and you need more and more of that drug. So you wouldn't be able to do it the same every single time, because if you think of your brother, you're gonna start loving him less. You're just gonna it's gonna like fade eventually.
Oh my God!
Don't do that, man. So and I think at the same time, if you're thinking about hating your school teacher, you're probably not gonna hate him the same way every single time, because hate is still a vague feeling, right? Because you might hate him a little bit more today than you did yesterday, because you're feeling just a little bit more angry.
I don't hate her, by the way. Before the record.
Or you might start to do the healthy thing and heal and move on, and then you won't be able to play the game.
So this is where the psychology comes into play.
That's why the master was for nothing.
It wasn't for nothing. It's
No, it's really interesting. Has anybody reached out to you from your school? Because of course the gamer community is, of course, I would assume, very much interested in what you're doing, because what you're doing is really different. I understand that there's other people doing it, but you're clearly one of the ones that is pushing the boundaries, and you're creating content around it, which is really important, because you can be doing this, and if you don't make videos about it, no one's going to see it.
Yeah.
So then there is no record of it, which is why you're definitely one of the ones in the front line, experimenting with this and showing people what is possible. Has anybody from your psychology school reach out to you, be like, oh my God, this is so cool?
Or what the fuck are you doing?
Why would you do this?
You're a disgrace to the
You studied all of this to do that?
This isn't science.
Do you think scientists spend years for you to play a game?
Well, I've gotten a few people and a few professors from various schools wanting me to come over and give a panel or a talk or something, which is pretty cool.
Okay. So that was good.
Not my school, actually. Other schools like Imperial College and things like that, which is awesome. A guy from Yale, but I don't know if that's legitimate. He seemed very strange. We'll see. We'll find out.
Yeah, you'll find out. Yeah, it depends.
Yeah.
If the email looks like it was sent with ChatGPT, then you probably don't want to respond.
Yeah, but no, Surrey and Imperial and places like that have asked me to come and talk, which is pretty awesome. More about the esports side of things, which is cool.
Yes, no, 100%. I mean, esports is definitely one of the biggest, entertainment markets in the world right now, and it's growing. It's not. I mean, we talked about this with Farhad. So Farhad's very much interested in sports. I was more into esports when we were younger because I was playing more video games. I would beat him every single time, of course.
No fucking way.
We'll set the record straight one day. So
live stream it one time.
We will.
EEG.
Yeah. Whoa. Oh my God. Wait a second. Oh, wait. Sorry. Different question just came up. When you said esports and when you said with EEG, have you seen anybody compete with two different EEG devices in a video game? Can you do that?
You definitely could. I've not seen anyone do that. As far as I
Nobody
know, I'm the
challenged
only
you?
person. No,
Nobody challenged you.
they are going to. I'm currently in the process of teaching someone how to use the EEG for TrackMania. And
What is
he's
TrackMania?
really-
It's another game.
It's a racing game. Yeah. So this
Okay.
person is kind of the most well-known TrackMania player, and he's really interested in using it one time. I know he's going to hate it because I think the reason why I like it is because I've grown very comfortable being uncomfortable playing games. I
Yeah.
don't have a big gaming background, so I have nothing to lose, really. I kind of play the same either way. So my performance doesn't really change. But I think when you're really, really, really good at a game, I think he's going to absolutely hate it. But it'll be good content. Yeah, so when
Exactly.
that happens, as far as I know, I'm the only person who is actually actively playing games with this. But people will start picking up, and I'll be helping whoever I can to do it. And then we can compete. I have a feeling this may be the only time in my life that I might beat people at games. Just because I have a head start with EEG, that's it. And then someone will overtake me.
So for the TrackMania, because I watched the video on your Instagram that you were controlling the car, were you controlling the car's direction with your head as a gyroscope, or it was the commands coming from the thought process that you had?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. What was your question?
No, the question was, how was the car control was happening? Was it with your head as a gyroscope or the thought process that you had?
So I was leaning forward to make it accelerate, and then the left and right and every other steering thing was with mental commands. The same mental commands, just keybinded to different things.
But how do you define the amount of left and right?
You have hotkeys, which I haven't keybinded yet to the EEG, but I will. But before every single map, I would just click 2, and that means that it couldn't turn by very much. And then it was just left by that amount. And it's about holding it. So you can hold it down if you keep visualizing the same thing. So if you hold it down a lot, it keeps turning. So it's just about kind of getting it right and letting it go. It takes quite a bit of focus. I've had to train myself to be a bit more focused because you got to start it and drop it and start it and drop it.
Wow. And what is the translation rate? What is the delayed rate from your brain when you think about it from
To
the
the game.
time
Yeah.
that the game actually picks it up?
It's like a solid beat. I can't give a specific time because it's me. I'm the problem that causes the delay. Yeah, the EEG.
I'm the delay.
I'm the delay. The EEG picks it up like that, and then the coding's really, really quick, and it's easy for everything. But I have to change my pattern of brain activity. And if I'm struggling, if I'm distracted, if the music is blaring or someone said something horrific in chat or something like that, then it will just take a little bit longer. Sometimes it's instant or semi-instant, and sometimes it takes ages and ages to get it right.
Sorry?
In TrackMania, one of the biggest problems that I encountered was you kind of have to have faith that it will turn because there is a delay like that. So a lot of the time I would just kind of run straight off the map and not react. And people would be like, what are you doing? You didn't even try, like your car didn't turn even slightly. You just ran off the map. Like what's going on?
My God.
And it's because I'm trying to turn and I have faith that I will, but sometimes I don't.
I can imagine you looking super concentrated like that, and then nothing's happening. You should have a brain fart sound effect that people can play the moment
I
you
love
miss
that.
a turn. That would be the funniest thing. Has this actually helped with your ADHD? Because you need to learn how to focus clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Has this actually helped you outside of what you're doing? Because you have to learn how to concentrate while everything else is going on around you 1,000 times on the same exact thing. When you're not playing video games, are you able to focus easier now?
I think so. I think it actually really has. I haven't done any sort of experiment on this, so I can't say scientifically for sure. But I think it has. I feel like it really has. Because you're totally right. You have to really, really pay attention, block things out. And it's especially if you're playing Elden Ring, it's the alternation between lots and lots of different mental commands. And you have to make sure you're really, really doing it. And then to attack and stuff like that, you can't just keep holding it down. You have to let go and then put it back on again and then let go so that it attacks more than once. And yeah, I really do think that it has helped focus, because you can train anything. Your brain is so plastic and it's constantly changing all the time that you absolutely can if you just practice. It's the same with sleeping and reading and any sort of skill that you can think of. You can just practice and get better at it. So I can
totally see the headlines. Perri treats ADHD, and then it's like and then you have this like you're all over the news. You're the one who actually is there any treatment for ADHD actually?
Pills,
right?
Medication. It only works in 60% of people roughly, but if it works, it's really, really good. Like it basically just fixes it. It's great.
So we had this chat with Farhad. We have to ask you, because you are definitely in the right position to answer this. You did study psychology. You do have ADHD according to yourself. But I feel like a lot of the kids that we talk to these days, a lot of them say they have ADHD. Do you think that they actually do, or no?
It's a trend.
They have, no, not that it's a trend, but it's more of, just because they can't focus or they're not good at focusing, they think they have ADHD. Because I don't even know how you diagnose it.
It's trendy to say I have ADHD.
But how does it work? So do you guys even study the research about how many people actually do have ADHD in the world right now?
I haven't looked at that specifically. I think with any mental health illness and any diagnosis at all, everyone is kind of on the spectrum of every single symptom. So we all have a little bit of everything. And then only when you've got enough to a certain extent that affects your life can you be diagnosed with that thing. That's the purpose of the DSM. It gives you a list of all that and then how bad it has to be able to diagnose you.
DSM?
It's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. It's just a list that people use. I think the world uses something else like the ICO, but I know the DSM. That's the American one.
Okay.
Yeah, so everyone's kind of got symptoms of everything. So I think if you struggle to focus, that is just one symptom of ADHD that's the most well known. So it's very possible that actually you've got something else, or you've got learning difficulty. It depends on the age as well.
Right.
Kids have lots of symptoms of lots of different things, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that. I have no idea how many people actually do have ADHD. I know that it's very common. But I guess then it comes to, does the therapy for it and the training for it and the medication work? Because if it does, then who cares? Yay. Fantastic.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
And I think it's the same for every single mental health problem. It's exactly the same.
What did you study specifically in psychology? What was your area of interest?
My area was perception, visual perception mostly, and eyes and hallucinations, visual illusions and stuff. The first thing that I learned was everything is not real and our eyes are terrible. And we have no idea what's going on.
Okay, hold on. Sorry. Welcome to the part 2 of this podcast, because I just got even more interested.
Nothing
Can you tell
is
me a
real.
little bit more about that?
That's the conclusion.
This is a simulation. Okay, but what do you mean by that?
Well, you've all probably used you've seen optical illusions, right?
Yes.
Everyone knows about those. Everyone's seen those. There is absolutely no reason why that applies just to that picture that you've seen. It's the same for everything. So everything in the corner of your eye, there's no real guarantee that's what's actually going on. And your brain fills in patterns all the time for everything. And there's one thing that comes to mind that is really, really fascinating. So you know how chocolate bars have been getting smaller and staying the same? That's not paranoia. They have been. The only reason we're noticing now, they've been consistently getting smaller for many, many years. The only reason we're noticing now is because there is a specific measurement, a specific proportion that something needs to decrease or increase in size for our brains to actually notice. And it's only now got to that point where we're noticing. Before, they would reduce them just by that tiny amount that we wouldn't see any sort of difference. So things
you're
can
talking
be changing.
you're talking about like Snickers bar and Mars bar and all that. So you're saying they decrease the size of my chocolates?
Oh, you
They've been doing it for years.
You take 4 or 5 at each intake.
Yeah,
So
but still,
make a difference.
so you're telling me they knew about these researches and then they used this against us? To make them smaller for more profit, of course, without us noticing, because we just wouldn't notice.
Yeah, exactly.
Holy shit.
Congratulations.
Outrageous, I know.
Yeah.
This is
Absolutely
crazy.
infuriating.
Okay, so definitely a very interesting area of study. One of the things that you brought up, which was really cool, about how your brain fills in patterns. So I forgot the exact name for this, but if you know about the graphics card that we use as artists, majority of us use NVIDIA graphics card because they are extremely powerful using RTX and ray tracing. And one of their technologies that has been there for many years and is actually getting better and better significantly, and you use them, I assume, in your video games without you knowing them, is you have 2 frames, right? This is your current frame, and then you have the upcoming frame that is supposed to be in your video game. Now, the NVIDIA graphics card, using AI, it can sort of predict what the next frame can look like. So it can essentially build... Yeah, it can essentially fill in the patterns just like our eyes would, so that you can have higher frame rate.
Yeah.
And prior to before, where you're using, let's say, normal graphics cards, where you have to actually just load everything physically until you get to see what the next frame looks like. Now it's sort of predicting what the next frame is, and that way you can have higher frame rate. And it's getting better and better with AI. And it's really interesting because our brains do exactly sort of the same thing. Not predicting the future, but filling in the patterns so that... I don't know. This is just all crazy stuff.
It's really, really cool. I didn't know that, actually. That's really awesome.
I mean, the only reason we know this is because so what's really interesting as a gamer, I was always using like the latest graphics cards and all that, but I didn't exactly know how they work and what they do. I just went out and bought the most expensive one because I needed to stream, and OBS was running at the same time. But now that we're doing 3D art in Unreal Engine and we're creating all these worlds that are eventually used in video games and in films, you need to know exactly what hardware to use for what purpose, and you get to understand what are these updates. So actually the updates that come out are always there for artists to use, but it's mostly marketed for gamers, right? They market it for gamers because it's gamers who buy the most amount of graphics card because they just
consume the most. They need.
There you go. Actually. Yeah, they just buy and they just throw money. All the streamers, I know this. All the streamers, all the gamers just buy the latest graphics card. They don't know exactly what it does. Like I didn't as well up until a year and a half ago. But now every time there's an update, we have to read it because there's so many cool things about it. But yeah, it's freaking fascinating what you're studying. Honestly, so you said you have masters in psychology right now?
Yeah.
And you did that, and then you started streaming while you were still studying?
Yeah, I started streaming in my second year of uni.
And you were juggling both of them at the same time?
Yeah, I was doing it at the same time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's what it
perfectly
is.
makes
It's a little
sense.
escape. I think a lot of people started streaming then.
So now, you just told us before the podcast that your schedule changed from 4 days a week now to 5 days a week stream. And how do you see this is going to turn out in 1 year time? So are you going to be a full-time streamer?
Yeah, and the reason we're asking this is because clearly people listening and watching this podcast, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people interested and they're going to go and check out your stream. So what we want to ask is, what's the future like for you now that you're putting in more time into this?
I'm basically, as of a week ago, I've been always very committed and very dedicated, but as of a week ago, I've sort of made this my only thing that I'm doing. I'm full-time and it's totally dedicated to it. And the reason why is because it's kind of the only thing that I've ever loved. That sounds really sad. Wait.
Actually, no. Let me emphasize on this. That's actually
your parents
amazing.
right behind the door right now. Wait, hold up.
You heard
so
me,
all
Mom.
those times you said I love you, you didn't mean it?
But
Do you have any pets? Sorry, I have to ask. Do you have any pets? Because if you have any
I
pets, you
don't.
just betrayed. Okay, all right,
No.
good.
But it's a beautiful thing, right? A lot of people go through life, find a job, they do so many things and they don't love it. They don't end up loving it. And if you find it at such an early stage, I think it's amazing.
It's
It's
absolutely
so lucky.
beautiful.
I
Yes.
think we're the luckiest people in the world to enjoy what we do. It's so
100%.
rare.
And you know, when you said you started streaming during COVID, because I went hard on streaming during COVID as well. And
Nice.
Farhad, you remember me shouting in the room.
I was in Australia stuck. So I
Yeah,
was not-
but
Is that
for
the reason
only when
why?
you came back. He left all the way to Australia just to be away. But no, he did come back
did, I think.
to Malaysia at the time. And he was there when I was streaming till midnight, late midnight. And what was beautiful about streaming during COVID, and I'm sure you can agree with me, is everyone was stuck at home. So number one, I would keep myself busy. Number two, there were so many people who had no other means of consuming entertainment. They were already done with all the TV shows on Netflix, and they were done with all the anime, and they just wanted some other form of entertainment. And streaming was, for me as well as a streamer, it was the most fun thing because I would spend time with a little bit with Farhad, a bit with my parents, but I was doing my work for the majority part of the day. But then at night, I was just enjoying my time with all the viewers. And the best part about it was those guys are still my friends. Like, I'm still talking to them till today, even though I stopped streaming. And that's the best part because you become friends with your viewers. And I absolutely love that about streaming.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And especially during COVID, the social aspect, that's what I found. There was 6 months where I was basically locked in a room in a city and no one else was there. So I didn't speak to a single other person. And then it didn't feel too bad because you're streaming and, like you say, your friends are there or your potential friends are there. And that was really, really, really beautiful. Absolutely.
And right now, so I definitely see it on your Instagram that everything's growing, of course, based on what you're doing because you're more consistent and you're putting in even more time and what you're doing is really unique. So if I were to ask you, where do you think you'll be in 5 years? Do you think you're going to be streaming still?
I'm going to try. I'm going to hope so. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to be the next... Oh my god, I'm blanking. Asmongold. That's the only shit I can think of right now. Yeah, I mean, that's
I thought
the
she was
plan.
waiting for drum roll.
There's no one playing sound effects for you here. This is not a stream, Perri.
No, but that's not the goal. The goal is to just keep making content and putting out new projects. And I'm keeping the EEG thing going, of course, because it's so cool. I'm developing that controller constantly. But the next project that I'm doing is actually about trying to get over fear in general, but also fear of horror games. So I'm using a heart rate monitor and I have a TENS unit that I've coded up and programmed. So every time my heart rate goes over a certain amount, it will shock me. I get like an electric shock. And then I'll be trying to go through all the recommended therapies according to psychology and the DSM to try and reduce
I'd
that.
love to
and
be
get
in the
better.
studio when you are doing that. It's fucking amazing. Where are you based actually? You're based in London, right? Or you
Near London, yeah, pretty much.
near
Oh my
you should
god.
go there and watch all
Dude,
the-
horror
I would
games
love
are
that.
already... Yeah, we have to do that. I already hate horror games.
I remember you
played a lot
screaming.
of
I remember you
I played a
screaming.
lot of them. Outlast was one of my favorites because they had the coolest jump scares.
Mm.
But For fuck's sake, are you telling me you're gonna shock yourself every time there's a jump scare?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to train myself. I'm going to learn to be zen and not be affected by jump scares.
You need therapy. Like legit, you
Yeah.
need therapy. You need what?
Monk after like 10 years being total peaceful
Total
state of
control.
mind,
Yeah,
and nothing
absolutely.
can bother her.
Yeah, literally.
Like, oh my god, that's gonna be
She's
Just
not
start
gonna be scared of
levitating.
anything. Nothing's gonna make her anxious. Nothing's gonna make her angry because she's already experienced it all.
I'm
That's the plan.
I'm thinking, what other use cases you think this EEG device can have beside gaming? I mean, I'm already thinking.
Yeah, we
what
already
you
have
do.
some, and we want to tell you about it. But what have you thought about?
I mean, kind of everything. Like I told you guys about the China focus stuff. There's all of that you could have. I honestly, the most of my thoughts are about gaming. So kind of generating new worlds based on how you're thinking and feeling about it, and controlling stuff like that. Focus in eSports and all of that stuff. I want to know your ideas.
Okay, so I'll tell you one, and then you
Yeah.
just go, right? So one thing that just popped up in my head, of course, IoT, Internet of Things, is a huge thing. And with Apple's Vision Pro headset, the whole idea is how can we control things without actually, pressing down keys. So that's
Yeah.
why with the Vision Pro headset, it has sensors and cameras that can track your fingers. But I'm assuming Farhad had this idea. The next level is, what if...
an EEG with a VR headset. So technically, you don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
You just sit down and think. I mean, that's a sad life, but but imagine it would be really.
No, wait,
different.
hold on. Why is it a
wouldn't be-
sad life?
No, it wouldn't be
You
sad.
do this with your phone.
Actually,
what's the
that's right.
freaking
It's not-
difference?
yeah.
Hypocrite.
Okay.
What's the
You
difference?
guys said I
Spending-
needed therapy.
No, you know what's funny, and I won't judge Farhad. Everybody, when there's a new technology or a new way of doing things, everyone's afraid of trying it because they think that's scary. Because that's why when people look
Yeah.
at Black Mirror is literally our lives right now, just a little bit exaggerated. It's the same freaking thing.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh my God, I don't want that to happen. It's already happened. You're already
Yeah.
doing, like, you're already checking people's social network before meeting them and sort of assessing what they're like. So you already do that. And it's normal. It's fine. It's nothing to be scared about. One thing that Farah just mentioned, the VR headset is really cool if you think about it, because if it tracks your eyes already, the Vision Pro headset, you can already scroll and move things. And then using your thoughts, then you can do further actions. That is just absolutely crazy. Like you really don't need to do anything. You can just think and make things happen. It's
That would be
awesome.
mental. And if it worked good enough, there are so many possibilities for people with accessibility issues and things like that. There's actually people are doing this right now. It's not quite EEG, but people are using VR to help people with Alzheimer's and other things like that to kind of get some memories back and play music and things like that. And it's that sort of activation that could be a thing. So if you can even just monitor your brain activity during that, you'll be able to make that so much more effective. But if you can use your brain, then amazing.
That is
really next
freaking
level.
crazy. Do you have any other use cases? I have some.
I'm thinking of so we create virtual worlds and virtual environments in Unreal Engine, right? We recently created a whole tomb from Egypt in Unreal Engine 5. So I'm thinking you can go inside and you can walk around and we can put objects that you can touch and imagine the information about that object comes to life.
Yeah, but you're even thinking about a step ahead, which is great, by the way. I never thought about that. But I'm even going a step back because a lot of the audience that are watching and listening to this right now are artists, 3D artists, majority of them, I assume. And what's crazy is we have loads of controls to deal with, just like you do in a video game when we're creating the worlds, when we're creating objects, when we're modeling or sculpting or texturing. Now imagine if you can just map some of these to your brain activity. And so while you're working, I understand that it takes time, but I assume with Neuralink and with all the advancements in technology, what you're working on right now, and this is exactly what we told you when we first met you, that we think you should continue doing this because clearly this is where it's all going, right? The direction that we're all going towards is definitely going to be, how can we do things easier? That's the human psychology.
Yeah.
We always want to make things easier for ourselves. It's been like that since the beginning of time. And so I'm imagining that you can create these 3D models and texturing and sculpting, which is already a very meditative process, by the way. If you haven't tried it, it's like painting when you're sculpting a character. And so if you can use your mind to take care of some of these controls, I assume it will be really fun.
And use the gyro to rotate the key.
Can we freaking okay? So of course not immediately, but we'd definitely love to continue this. Some of the guests that we bring on the podcast, we always tell them, depending on what they're doing, we always like to continue the conversation and also be able to do some experiments together. For example, the drone pilot Pat that we brought on the podcast, he's a pro drone pilot that works on Hollywood films like Deadpool 2, and he is just a beast when it comes to piloting drones. So we are planning to do a video with him where we go and take our drones and we're gonna do a race with his drones, like a bunch
We're
of
gonna embarrass ourselves
and embarrass ourselves. But we're imagining something cool to be done here eventually down the line. We'd love to meet you and then test out exactly how this works, make a video about it and have people see it.
I would love that. I would love that. Absolutely. I'm down for whatever.
That's
I'm
beautiful.
going to regret saying that, I think. But
there was one more use case I'm trying to remember. I just thought of it.
But before use case, right? Because all of these use cases, I had one question that came into my mind. When you are finished playing the game with the EEG device, is there any analytics or logs that you can look at? That, for example, you have triggered this pattern. Because I'm an analytic guy, I would love to go back and see that, after this game, you triggered this button 5 times, 6 times. You attempted to trigger, but you didn't hit the threshold
3 times
because you didn't hit the. Have you ever measured any of these numbers, or is the are the numbers available in the first place?
I think they could be.
You can hire me to do the analytics for you.
How would I know if I was trying? If I didn't
because
do it?
what you mentioned, there is a threshold, right? So imagine the threshold is 0.5. So you have reached how many times you have reached. If I would create that analytics, I would create 3 levels: 0.1 to 0.2, 0.2 to 0.3, and 0.3 to 0.5, and I would call it good attempt, medium attempt, bad attempt.
Theoretically, right?
And then how many times you reach any of these thresholds, you would know that, 90% I passed, 10% I wasn't there, and then, the list
You
goes
could
on.
absolutely do that. That would be definitely possible. Fairly easily, actually. We're going to talk. We should talk about this.
We should make that happen.
Yes. That would be incredibly useful. And then you can streamline it and see which ones are never going to work. And then, that's great.
One more thing. Can you, or has Emotive is the brand that you said you're using right now? Okay. Has Emotive used AI in their software? Or actually, I have to reframe my question, because it has to be you that is the person that uses AI. Because let's say you track your brain activity right now 1,000 times to get one activity down. Of course, with the help of AI, you can make sure it's more accurate, because then it sort of understands that sort of brain activity. And then even if it's a little bit different the next time, if your plate is slightly bigger or smaller, it will still be good at recognizing it. Because right now, we are literally in the age of AI, right? This year is the year that AI is getting bigger and bigger. Have you thought about doing that?
I'm not exactly sure how I would. It uses machine learning already, which is, I know, not exactly the same thing. I think you're totally right that it could make a difference, but I'm not sure how. I'm not sure exactly how. I know that Emotive have mentioned it, but I don't think they've done anything with it yet in the same way, because we're still trying to figure out how that would work and how you would integrate it.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. These are just some ideas that popped in our head, but I assume what will happen is you're just going to get bigger and bigger, and I would love to see you actually fund it so that you will develop your own sort of software. Perri Labs or something like that. That would be awesome.
And then she will train all the eSport gamer. Yeah.
No, it'll be great. But I honestly am very much thrilled about what you're doing, and I hope everybody watching and listening will go and check out your profile on Twitch. Actually, let me ask you this question. Where are you most active on? I assume it's Twitch, but can you let everybody know so they can go check it out?
It's Twitch/Perri Karyal.
Perfect.
I'm also, I post regularly on pretty much every platform. YouTube, I'm getting more into YouTube these days, and I'll be posting the projects that I'm starting soon. So the anxiety, the fear about horror games and the heart rate stuff. I'm going to be doing some work in isolation, some work in using EEG into creating music, but I got to keep all of this under wraps for now.
Makes sense.
But there'll be a lot of content coming out.
And when do you stream?
I stream 5 times a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 1 p.m. BST until 6.
Perfect. That you can't miss it. There's way too many streams.
You
cannot
I'm
miss
live
it.
most of the time. So
Okay. Perfect. So everybody, now that you have listened to that,
I'm gonna put them all in the description so people can have
Thank
the
you.
link as well.
awesome. So, well, Perri, thank you so much. We had a lot of fun talking to you. We'll definitely
too.
continue the conversation and see where this goes. And we'll be looking forward to your streams and see how many times you can die in Elden Ring, so we can have more fun. By the way, are you done with Elden Ring, or are you still?
I'm going to release a compilation of all the bosses that are going to be completely hands-free, just mind control stuff. But I'm going to be doing that off stream probably as we do some more projects and develop it in a different way. I think people have seen the Elden Ring and they'd be more interested to see where we go, like you say, with the more developing it more. But I'll be posting that eventually. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, makes sense. No, we're looking forward to it. Guys, go and check out the videos because all of this talking will not truly let you experience what she's doing because it's absolutely fun and it's absolutely crazy. Perri, thank you once again.
you.
Thank you to every single one of you guys who joined us on this episode. We'll be back again next week. Until then, ciao.
Ciao.